Are you surprised by this? Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham lied to the Big 12 Conference before their game against Texas Tech, and that is unraveling this week. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Conveniently, last week, Kyle Whittingham did not put Devon Dampier on the injury report for the Big 12 Conference, which coaches are supposed to do, required to do. And then after the loss, he said, hey, part of the reason we lost, our quarterback's hurt. You can't do that. A fine is likely incoming. He had to go correct himself with a big, long graphic on Twitter, and here's why. That's just another feather in the hat of a program in the Big 12 in Utah that has disappointed the Big 12 Conference and a lot of its fan base. Then the ACC and the Big 12 look really silly this week with their scheduling. Why aren't Baylor and Texas Tech playing every year? Iowa State and Kansas State's rivalry is over, and the ACC wants a 9-game conference schedule for 17 teams. That's not how math works. And finally, Mike Gundy. It was time. And that's good for Mike Gundy. This is great for Mike Gundy, and it's good for Oklahoma State. Here's the reason that both of those things can be true. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. Utah did not tell the truth.
Kyle Whittingham, Utah. I don't even need to intro this. Go ahead.
He lied. I mean, there's at some level, like, I want to like Utah. And I think they have the most important fan base in the Big 12 because it's so vital to have kind of the heel, the people who are like, oh, we're going to win every game, and then everybody else in the conference can not like them, and they pack the stadium just to beat Utah. That's a great moniker for Utah. But your football coach comes out this week. So the Big 12, and you may think it's stupid, and it is kind of stupid to me too. The Big 12 requires every football coach to give an injury report each week. They vary from out to questionable to, there is a very high likelihood they're doubtful, they won't play. And Whittingham, this is the stupidest thing, man. Whittingham doesn't put Devon Dampier, their quarterback, on any of the injury lists. He's like, you know what? Good to play, not doubtful, nothing. So there's no inkling that he's injured. If your player suffers an injury and is not 100%. The Big 12 has made it very clear we need to list this guy as doubtful so we as a league can monitor the injuries for the player's safety. Whittingham comes to his press conference on Monday and makes the excuse of, oh, well, yeah, we lost the game, but our quarterback was hurt. And immediately everyone around the room starts looking around going, wait a second. There's a whole checks and balances for that. You didn't report him being hurt. He wasn't doubtful. He wasn't likely. He wasn't out. He wasn't any of those things. The Big 12 requires you. So you can't make up. You cannot, in the middle of the week, decide, well, we lost. Yeah, obviously. Our quarterback was hurt. And I've heard from guys who are on the sideline. Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech was on the sideline. So yeah. Dampier had a limp. I mean, he didn't look 100%. You could tell his lower body, he was feeling something from pretty much jump. But the whole rule is in place for player safety that the Big 12 says if that's the case with a guy, you have to tell us. And now all of a sudden, Utah loses. Yeah, well, Devon Dampier was hurt, so of course we lost. It just feels so cheap that a guy who I have a lot of respect for, and then BYU fans will push back, respect for that guy? Yes, the BYU linebacker Kyle Whittingham, I have respect for him. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's one of the better coaches in the Big 12. He's crawling. Can I say this? He's creeping up on the Mike Gundy syndrome, by the way. He's getting into the Mike Gundy territory of you being like, wait a second, you've yet to win a Big 12 home game. What do we do with that? If Kyle Whittingham loses to Tulsa next year, we'll have a real conversation. And I hate that he comes to the podium and he's the week after a loss, he's like, yeah, well, our quarterback was hurt. What do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do? You're supposed to report these games with you. Listen, this would have been stupid last year, TJ. We would all say, we'd have rolled our eyes and be like, of course you'd make this excuse. Your quarterback was hurt. This year, he has no excuse. He lies to the Big 12, says the kid's fine. You can't reverse it a couple of days later and be like, well, yeah, he was hurt the whole time. Nope, doesn't work that way anymore.
Do you think, we didn't really talk and recap the Texas Tech game, but so not to dwell on that, but do you think he do you think he maybe knew what was coming. And so it was just, certainly it was just gamesmanship of trying to get them to prepare one way and not the other. Cause that game certainly didn't go down the way I thought it would. And when we both kind of had it closer than it was,
sure.
But was it just an attempt at gamesmanship that he slipped on?
It can't be anymore. There's a rule against that. So, and that's what's even wilder here. If you start piecing these together, I know I'm kind of the guy, the meme of the guy with the red tape everywhere who's pointing at the board, but it's how I feel. So we have established in the Big 12, right? We've established in the Big 12 that there is no more gamesmanship. For the safety of the players, you must report this. And if you don't report it, you get fined. So Kyle Whittingham comes out this week. The administration made him tweet. Here's what's great. There'll be Utah fans like, well, that didn't happen. They forced him, their PR department, forced him to tweet an apology and clarification. So obviously something wasn't right here. And so you can no longer gamesmanship. And I don't even, if it was gamesmanship, if Kyle Whittingham, this is what's so stupid to me. If Kyle Whittingham had put Devon Dampier as doubtful, TJ, on the scouting report, guess how many quarterbacks Texas Tech now has to scout? The entire room.
Yeah.
The whole room. So if you want to gamesmanship this, you tell Texas Tech that your QB may not be 100%. And from there, you can lean on, hey, there's a reason, one, he didn't look 100%. I told you guys to the Big 12 last week that he's not fully healthy. And when you see him limping on the field, you're like, yeah, as a fan, shoot, man, that sucks. We didn't get to see him at full strength. And you know what? Had he been at full strength, Utah loses 34-17. So we're just pushing this out here from Kyle Whittingham instead of 34-10. We're pushing this out here from Kyle Whittingham that, yeah, he was not, he wasn't feeling right. He wasn't good enough to be 100%. He wasn't good enough to play at his highest level. And that's what the Big 12 has built. That's what the Big 12 has put its entire initiative into this injury report for, to help the safety of the players. Whittingham lies about it last week to the Big 12 conference, or he lies about it this week to the media, and Devon Dampier wasn't actually hurt. And either way, he did something wrong because Utah's football account just tweeted out a quote from Kyle Whittingham that was certainly not written by Kyle Whittingham, either his PR guy or AI, that says, oops, sorry, need to clarify something here. Yeah, you do, because you lied to somebody. And again, I want to make excuses to give Utah the benefit of the doubt. I want to make excuses to be behind Utah and support them as a Big 12 program. Their fan base not wanting to be here, their head coach and their AD making crass comments about the Big 12, just all of it put together. It's like, dang, man, you can't get out of your own way. I don't understand. And I think fans of my show are sick and tired of me talking about Utah, but God bless, they beg to be in the spotlight. Like they beg for it, and they don't ever get it for positive reasons. There's not been like one thing they've done right in the last year and a half in the Big 12 conference, despite coming in and saying we're going to do everything right and be the golden child. They haven't won a home game here. They missed a bowl game last year as the preseason favorite. And this year, for some reason, we let them be in the top 25 to start the year. And they crapped all over that. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to help them. I want to love them, TJ. But man, they make it hard sometimes.
You got to love yourselves first, Utah, before Drake can love you.
They love themselves too much. That's the problem.
There's no room for anyone else to love you with how much you love yourself. Just very quickly, they got to go to Morgantown this weekend. Has the injury report come out yet this week? Or I guess we're in the afternoon, so maybe not. But just quick West Virginia thoughts, and we'll wrap this up.
Gosh, I love West Virginia so much. 41-13 Utah. There's nothing we can do with this West Virginia team right now. They got their Pitt win, which was awesome. Past that, man, I think West Virginia next year will be a force in the Big 12. They need one more good offseason.
Prayers up to the West Virginia folks this weekend.
Yeah.
Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
At Locked On Big 12, at LO Big 12 on Twitter, wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12, and on YouTube, and at Drake C. Toll on Twitter as well.
Thanks, buddy.
Always fun, TJ. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda is now what I drive. And I made the switch because Mazda is full of power and class. They craft cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved, and do it with Mazda. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is exactly where I go as a 24-year-old young man who spends way too much money on food delivery to go get my things straight. Whether it's 401ks, investments, or the house that I have, if you get the full picture and you want the full picture, Monarch Money is there for the full picture. It's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing finances, they can do it for you. It's like 3 apps doing the heavy lifting, but in one. Identifying what you aren't saving as much as you thought you were on, and Monarch Money can even help you notice inefficient allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege at Monarch Money.
The ACC and the Big 12 scheduling is interesting. I'll start with the ACC. A lot of times I pitch these to you to start these out. The ACC, considering a 9-game schedule, it seems like they've already voted on that, a 9-game schedule for their 17-team conference. So, of course, that doesn't work.
Yeah, well, question, TJ. Hold on. I hate to cut you off already, but the math on that is not real. It's not even, is the math in the room with us right now? It's not a thing.
Yeah. It is incredible how we can get on here. And just when I think we're going to have a week where we don't rail on the ACC, because there really just wasn't a lot to, Miami got a good win this week in the ACC against an admittedly terrible SEC opponent. But just when I think we're going to have a week where we can get on here and not make fun of the ACC, they go and completely redeem themselves, right? As Dumb and Dumber says. So the way that they didn't have the foresight. So anyway, what they'll end up doing is one team will literally just play 8 conference games that year to make it work out, which is asinine and makes no sense at all. But that'll be a nightmare when we get to tiebreakers and things of that nature. It really needs to be like one of the bottom teams in the conference that isn't going to compete, that you do that to, like, let Wake play an 8-game schedule so it doesn't impact it. I mean, you imagine letting Clemson, Miami, or Florida State, which I know Clemson's struggling, but imagine letting one of them play 8 games and you basically get you have one, Miami has one more loss because they had to play a 9th game or just whatever. But anyway, they're going to this 9-game model. The lack of foresight to understand that this is the way that college football was trending, because the Big 12 was already here. The Big 10 went here. The SEC has been talking about going here for a while, to not realize that you would eventually need to go here as well. And then adding 3 teams, Cal, Stanford, and SMU, that we thought were going to replace teams that were leaving, which teams will eventually leave. But the idea to go to this now, and it's just a complete cluster there in Charlotte at the ACC headquarters. Yeah.
So as much as it's a cluster with the math of the ACC, and I love to make fun of the ACC, I think the Big 12 is also losing here, TJ. And there are 2 conferences. So if you look at like Torvik or Massey or a lot of these rankings, they would tell you that the Big 12 and the Big 10 are actually really tightly contested this year for second best conference in college football, obviously behind the SEC. And the ACC is closer to the American than it is the Big 12. So to loop in these 2 conferences together kind of sucks and hurts my soul. But we have to. Because the Big 12 is also completely whiffing when it comes to scheduling. Can anyone in the country explain to me? So Baylor and TCU have played like every year since 1899, which is awesome. We're going to keep that rivalry. But one of the other longest standing rivalries in college football, this is, by the way, from Cyclone Larry, who's one of my favorite Twitter accounts. One of the other largest rivalries and longest standing rivalries in college football would be Iowa State, Kansas State. What the Big 12 Conference has decided to do, what Brett Yormark has decided to do, and it's one of the very few things I disagree with him on, is to throw out tradition altogether. That's not a protected rivalry. Those 2 teams won't play every year. At least the SEC is going to move to a pod format, where we know that Arkansas is going to get to play Texas every single year. Arkansas can play Missouri, its rival, every single year. Alabama plays Auburn each year. In the Big 12, we have like 4 protected rivalries. And one of them is Arizona State, and they don't give a rat's butt about each other. Kansas State, on the gridiron, hates Iowa State more than they hate Kansas, And we instead made the Sunflower Showdown our big rivalry the Big 12 wants to protect. The fact of this conference, it's the one area where I want to just bend Brett Yormark's ear and say, why are you doing this? It's the one area of our conference where everyone, coaches, fans, administrators agree we should protect the sanctity of rivalries, protect the regionality of college football in the Big 12, of volleyball, of cross country in the Big 12, of whatever have you. Why isn't the concept of the westernmost teams playing each other annually being adopted? Then teams like Baylor and Houston, or Baylor, Texas Tech, Baylor and BYU playing every year. Why isn't that a thing? You think about this. You could build it out into pods, TJ, where now we have the easternmost teams, and you got your Cincinnati, your West Virginia, your UCF. Maybe you throw Iowa State in there and have them play every year. Create rivalries. There's a reason that Rivalry Week has so much pomp and circumstance in college football. The matchups mean more. People want to watch them more. What the Big 12 has done is decided we don't want to do rivalries anymore. We don't think this is very fun. We think that we're being overshadowed by other conferences. And if we keep doing rivalries, it will dilute the product, as opposed to having Baylor play Arizona, or as opposed to having a year in which we see Cincinnati play Arizona State. I don't care about those matchups near as much as I care about Cincinnati playing West Virginia. That should happen every year. It actually gives West Virginia fans a vague chance to drive to the game. Also not a very fun drive from Morgantown, but at least they can do it. As opposed to driving to Tucson, Arizona, which they certainly should not have to do. I am concerned with the way the Big 12 is scheduling, because they are not, I don't even know if they're becoming cowardice to the idea of rivalries or a rivalry week, but they're trying to mix the pot up so much that it makes zero sense to me why we have to mix the pot. Rivalries are what we love in college. We don't love Oregon playing against Ohio State. It doesn't feel right still. It's like a conference game still. In your psyche, you're like, yeah, they're two good teams, but Columbus, Ohio on November 7th at 11 a.m., Oregon, Ohio State, that's gross. And it is gross. It is what we hate about the modern day in college football. We want those games in the playoff. We want those games in a bowl. And the Big 12 is saying, no, that's going to be a regular season. You don't get protected rivalries, which is almost as stupid to me as the ACC saying, yep, you're all playing non-conference games. And then immediately going to the drawing board. yeah. And immediately going to the chalkboard and drawing it out and going, wait a second.
It's the meme of the guy with the pizza box saying, we need to find the guy who did this.
100%.
Exactly that.
Eric Andre. Yes, there is, man, there's such a disconnect, I feel like, from Jim Phillips and the fan bases of the ACC. There's such a disconnect there. And it's not easy to do the 9-game schedule with 17 teams, or figure out how you want to do any of it, or if you want to slot Notre Dame in there for somebody or something. And they went to 17, TJ, as we know, because of realignment. They were expecting Florida State and Clemson to leave, and soon Florida State and Clemson will. Give it a couple of years. It seems like it's settled down to the point that we're looking at 2030 for their exit. But, Jim, you kind of have to still play football between now and 2030. The math still has to check out for the next 3 or 4 years. You can't just punt it and be like, well, they're going to leave one day. And so I think both conferences have egg on their face a little bit right now with their lack of ability to schedule. Whereas the SEC, may I commend them for the first time on this show ever, they did a good job. They potted these teams out and said, look, you get to play 3 teams every year that my fan base, I went to Baylor. My fan base should expect to play either in Lubbock or in Waco against Texas Tech every single year. And you cannot give me a reason why that should not happen.
Well, you may give them some love. Drake, if I had to ask you, the SEC, if I had to ask you what the best SEC matchup has been for the last 2 decades, what would you say, like on a consistent basis, not just one specific game?
Yeah.
What's been the best SEC matchup the last 20 years?
Am I able to say Alabama LSU, or is that a cop out?
Well, guess what? That ain't happening anymore. And so I understand the fairness of scheduling, and I understand that you try and protect certain rivalries, not others. But the fact that we are not getting that annually anymore, like that, to me, that's like the obvious answer. If you said the last 5 years, you might say Alabama, Georgia, but Alabama, LSU, for the that's been, I understand that people are going to say, oh, Michigan and Ohio State. And I understand other people are going to say this game or that game. That's been the best game in college football for the last 2 decades, consistently. Yeah. There are years where it hasn't.
You're right, TJ. I do once again hate the SEC. You're correct.
They don't, but the people that run this sport don't care about this sport. That's the problem.
Yeah.
We can boil that all down to this. Yes, they care about money. They don't care about this sport. And so that's frustrating because rivalries do matter. And listen, I'm not a Bama fan, I'm not an LSU fan. I don't care if neither of those programs ever win another game. I don't care if they never lose another game unless they're playing my team. But I just to take that away, it sucks. So I needed some. You were too positive on the SEC. I had to bring it back in a little bit.
Bad.
So
hand up, my bad. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go all fall long. With the NFL kicking off, FanDuel is here for you at FanDuel.com. You can currently place a $5 bet. And if it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you're a new customer. $300 in bonus bets if your $5 bet hits for new customers. Quick, easy, best way to add a little energy to my Sundays. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. That $5 bet, if it hits, can turn into $300. $300 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel. Do it today at FanDuel.com.
210. So I like to go.
Nice.
5. So we'll see. Just make sure my mic is the right one. Yep. All right, 3-2. Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Locked on Big 12 with us today, Drake C. Toll. Some breaking news. We don't often do these breaking news, but I appreciate Oklahoma State making their announcement right before we were set to record. Mike Gundy out. Everybody remembers the rants. I mean, shoot, they were a really good team for a long time too, and a lot of fun. But unfortunately, that era is now over. I'll let you take it away here, Drake.
Man, I love it. It's 5:00 somewhere, there's just something on some beach, like insert any of the bro country songs you want to here. I can picture it now, hair flowing in the wind. Mike Gundy is probably he feels like an Orange Beach guy, maybe Seaside, possibly. And he's sitting there right now with the mullet. He's got a PBR in his right hand or a Bush. I think he likes Bush Tall Boys. And he's just hanging out, dude. This is the best thing possible for Mike Gundy because the infrastructure around him was no longer built for him to succeed. It's as if you've got I've kind of compared it to when I worked for Sports Illustrated, and it's the only job I've been fired from. And I talked about how at the end of my tenure there, I didn't feel like the upper level management had any confidence in me. The listenership or viewership had gone down. My product was failing, and I just couldn't figure it back out. My stuff early on had been really good. That's why they hired me. And then when I got there, after about a year, it became stale. And it's not apples to apples. But if you're a highly successful real estate agent who's sold for 25 years and your last 2 years, your boss is like, hey, by the way, we hate you and we want to give you $0 and we're taking your car away. You're like, okay, why would I want to still work for your real estate company? I think this is awesome for Mike Gundy. At the same time, it has felt like for the last now year and a half that Oklahoma State wanted to make a change. They wanted any excuse to make a change. And Mike Gundy said, okay, I'll give you an excuse. I'm going to lose at Tulsa. There will be people who push back on this, like, oh, Gundy's a competitor. Yeah, but at some point, you break the human will. Your spirit is nigh. You're like, all right, dude, if you don't want me here, if your entire goal as an administration, if your entire goal as a donor base is to fire me, then just do it. Now, look, should come as no surprise to anyone. Gundy was shopping other jobs. Within the last 8 years, he had a couple of offers. There were offers on the table in the Big 12 that Gundy would have accepted or that he legitimately pondered. And the same is true for most coaches in college football. They get that right call or the right couple of calls, and they at least get on with the chancellor and the AD and they talk about it. This reminds me similarly to how Gary Patterson was fired from TCU. And honestly, it worked out really well for Gary Patterson. It worked out really well for TCU in the end because for Patterson, he gets to play 36 holes of golf every day and now has become a really good friend and mentor of mine. And on the other hand, for TCU, they went to the national championship immediately with Sonny Dykes. They were able to rebuild quickly, and they currently have a different chancellor and athletic director from when Patterson was there. So for TCU, you could argue the chancellor and athletic director weren't great fits. They were ousted. They didn't give Gary Patterson a very good support system. Patterson ultimately is gone. And for those three guys, like Patterson got caught up in a really bad administration, and that sucked for him. Gundy got caught up in a really bad administration, and it sucks for him. But because of those three casualties, and Oklahoma State's looking for a new AD, because of those casualties, both at the top and with the football coach, you ultimately got to move into a new era where you could once again be successful. This is really good news for Mike Gundy. And it's really good news for Oklahoma State fans too, I believe. You can just kind of say, hey, we had the wrong administration in place to help you succeed. Sorry, we'll bring you back in 3 years when those guys are gone. We'll give you the orange jacket. We'll build you the statue. We'll apologize. For today, Gundy's ass is in the sand somewhere in the Gulf, and he's having a great time with a beer in his hand. And I can only hope that's the approach of the Gundy family because, yeah, he is. It cannot be disputed. He is Oklahoma State football. He built that entire program. And if you're going to fire him, man, kudos to Mike Gundy. Like you didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve that. This is just good for, I think, both parties involved.
What next for both parties? Do you think Gundy tries to get, you were talking about him searching for other jobs. Do you think he tries to get something else, takes a couple of years off, then tries to get something else, goes the TV route, which would be hilarious, right? And then what for Oklahoma State as well? What's the direction of a coach that they try to look in right now?
I love if Mike Gundy got to TV. Oh,
right next to Nick.
Mike,
right next to Nick.
Dude. So with Locked On Big 12, which is my main source of income, this is me peeling back the curtains. Co-host, obviously you split it 50-50, right? There's one human being on this planet that I would split my entire income with 50-50, and it's Mike Gundy to Locked On Big 12. This is good. If he's fired in the first 3 years of his new deal, he'll get paid $15 million. I can picture it now. He's sitting, driving in Stillwater, Oklahoma in 3 years, where he probably still lives at the time. And he's sitting there with a former player or a buddy of his. And the buddy's like, man, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And he goes, I got $15 million. Like, yeah, it sucks. But there are so many opportunities for Mike Gundy in the next 3 years to just chill out and have a good time. You could tell at Big 12 Media Days. I asked him a couple questions, talked to him briefly there. He's lost the fastball. And again, it's because of the lack of infrastructure at Oklahoma State. He's going to rest for a little bit. I think that's what's next for him. Hopefully he does get back into coaching. Would love to see him. He's 170 wins, 90 losses. Would love to see him go somewhere and get to the 200 mark. That's a guy that deserves it and could probably still do it somewhere that wants him to win. I mean, he could pull the Dan Mullen route and go have a retirement job at UNLV or a place like that after a couple years off or a couple years in TV. Then for Oklahoma State, search begins now. I mean, this is a program that last year, Mike Gundy was the 2023 Big 12 Coach of the Year.
Wow.
Like that's what we just did here is crazy. And for them, they have to go replace a guy that recently was the best coach in the Big 12. Maybe Jim Knowles is the next head coach at Oklahoma State. Was a great defensive coordinator there and has moved on to be a spectacular defensive coordinator at the highest levels of college football. Maybe G.J. Kinney down at Texas State deserves a shot now. Maybe Jeff Traylor at UTSA. There are a lot of names being thrown out there. I think Oklahoma State's search begins now, but you're replacing a guy who was just recently good. And there have already been former Oklahoma State players tweeting out, careful what you wished for. So I don't know, is the next guy, your Sonny Dykes, is the next guy going to take you to a national championship next year? I don't think so. But I guess Oklahoma State's looking for the right candidate.
Do you think that with letting go of a legend who had struggled here recently, do you think that there's optimism? Like, will the hire re-energize the fan base, or will there be frustration about him being gone?
The fans were ready for this. The fans have to be. You can't lose Tulsa at home. You can't. Two things can be true. Mike Gundy is the greatest coach in Oklahoma State history, and you can't lose to Tulsa at home. That's your death wish. So fans don't want to keep losing to Tulsa at home. Like, that on the one hand, it's like, man, I really want Mike Gundy to be my neighbor. I want her to come help me do my yard work. Oh, shoot. There's a black bear in my backyard. Who do I call? Probably Mike Gundy. He can figure it out. That's what the fan base wants. I think is crazy Uncle Gundy to hang around and be the guy who you just hang out with in the coffee shop for the next 20, 30 years. And you're like, oh yeah, if you want to see Mike Gundy, go to the coffee shop in Stillwater, Oklahoma and say hello to him every morning at 7 a.m. That's what they want. They want the best for him, but they want change. I think the fan base is going to be okay.